Billionaire pretended to be blind to see how his maid treats his son. What he saw next was unreal. The room was silent except for the soft click of a cane tapping marble and then a sharp, wet sound that didn't belong in a home built on lullabies and trust. Sebastian Halle stood just beyond the doorway, his designer sunglasses hiding eyes that missed nothing. His posture slackened into the convincing stoop of a man who could no longer see. On the floor, his 6-year-old son Noah lay curled on his side, cheek pressed to the cold stone, breath hitching as if he were afraid to breathe too loudly. Above him, the maid's bare foot hovered, trembling with rage, then came down again, this time not to strike, but to pin, to warn. "Don't cry," she hissed. "You'll make it worse." Sebastian's fingers tightened around the cane until the polished wood creaked. The sound that followed wasn't Noah's sob. It was Sebastian's heart breaking open. The world he had built, boardrooms conquered, companies acquired, fortunes multiplied, collapsed into that single brutal image. The maid, Mara, straightened her dress as if she'd spilled water, not crushed a child's spirit. She glanced toward Sebastian, calculating, and when she saw the dark lenses and the cautious tilt of his head, she smiled. It was a smile sharpened by certainty, by the belief that the man who owned this palace could not see what she had done. Sebastian forced his breath to slow. Months earlier, a doctor had suggested the deception as a temporary measure light sensitivity after surgery, a precaution. Sebastian had turned it into a test. He had felt it, a disturbance in the house since his wife's death, a tightness that clung to the walls. Noah had grown quieter. Bruises appeared where childhood should have left only grass stains. When Sebastian asked, the answers were always the same. "I fell. I bumped into the table." And always, Mara stood nearby, gentle as a hymn, eyes lowered in perfect respect. So Sebastian leaned into the lie. He learned to count steps, to memorize echoes, to tilt his head just so. He learned how easily monsters trust darkness. Now he stood in it, drowning. Mara crouched and brushed imaginary dust from Noah's sleeve, her voice suddenly syrup-sweet. "Up you get," she said. Noah didn't move. His small hand shook, fingers splayed as if the floor might swallow him. Sebastian tapped his cane once, twice, pretending confusion. "Is everything all right?" he asked softly. His voice was steady because he made it steady. The discipline that closed billion-dollar deals held him together now. Mara turned, smile flawless. "Of course, Mr. Halle." The boy tripped. "Children are clumsy." She said it with a laugh that invited agreement, that begged him to share the joke of it. Sebastian nodded, blind man's nod, and angled his face toward Noah. "Come here, son," he said, and the word son nearly undid him. Noah crawled. He crawled to his father. The movement was small, humiliating, and it detonated something ancient in Sebastian's chest. He bent, hands searching, and when they found Noah's shoulders, he felt the heat of fear under thin fabric, the tightness of muscles braced for impact. Sebastian pulled him close, breathing him in, memorizing the weight. He could feel the place where the foot had pressed, the shallow tremor that would not stop. "It's okay," he murmured, and to Mara it sounded like a reassurance. To Noah it was a promise. Sebastian straightened, the mask back in place. "Mara," he said, careful, "would you bring Noah a glass of water?" Her eyes flicked to the kitchen, to the hallway camera she'd learned to avoid, to the schedule she controlled. "Right away," she replied, and for a moment her gaze lingered on Noah, sharp and warning. Then she turned and walked away, heels clicking like punctuation. The house breathed again. Or pretended to. Sebastian carried Noah to the couch, set him down, and kept one hand anchored to his back. "You did nothing wrong," he said, barely above a whisper. Noah didn't answer. He stared at the carpet, tracing invisible lines with his finger. Sebastian felt the rage settle into something colder, something precise. Rage burned out. Precision lasted. He had built his life on it. When Mara returned, Sebastian let his hand drift from Noah's back and folded it over the cane. "Thank you," he said, turning his head toward the sound of the glass. She placed it too close to the edge of the table, an old trick, a test. He reached, fumbled deliberately, knocked it over. Water spilled. "Oh," he said, embarrassed. Mara sighed, long and patient, the sigh of someone burdened by another's weakness. "I'll clean it," she said, already kneeling, already performing. Sebastian listened to the paper towel's tear, to the rhythm of her breathing. He catalogued it all. Later, alone in his study, Sebastian stood before the window without his glasses on. Sunlight cut clean lines across the floor. He closed his eyes anyway. The image would not leave him. He replayed it until the details sharpened instead of fading. The angle of Mara's foot. The way Noah curled inward. The confidence. Confidence came from repetition. This was not the first time. He thought of the references. The impeccable background checks. The interviews conducted by people paid to see nothing but what fit. He thought of how power insulated him from the truth. How wealth built walls so thick suffering could knock and never be heard. He thought of his wife's last words to him in the hospital, breath thin as paper. "Protect him," she had said. Sebastian pressed his palm to the glass. "I will," he said now, to the reflection he could no longer trust. The next morning he wore the glasses at breakfast. He miscounted steps. He spilled coffee. He let Mara correct him. He let her take over. Control was her language, and she spoke it fluently. When Noah reached for toast, Mara's hand snapped out, too fast to be kind. "Not yet," she said. Noah flinched. Sebastian's jaw tightened. "Let him eat," he said mildly. Mara smiled, set the toast down harder than necessary. "As you wish," she replied. The words were polite. The tone was not. Sebastian began to notice patterns the way he noticed markets. How Mara positioned herself between him and Noah. How she waited until rooms were empty. How she smiled only when eyes were on her. He learned the cadence of her cruelty, the pauses she took to make it deniable. He learned how she enjoyed the power of a child's silence. By the third day, Noah stopped speaking at breakfast. By the fifth, he stopped meeting Sebastian's face even when Sebastian turned toward him. By the seventh, Sebastian had filled a notebook with times and places, with impressions and sounds, with the shape of the truth. He did not confront. Confrontation would scatter the evidence and put Noah at risk. He played the longer game. He always did. One afternoon, Sebastian pretended to nap in the sunroom. He let his breathing deepen. He let his head tilt. He listened. Mara's footsteps softened as she approached Noah. "You think he knows?" she whispered. Noah shook his head. "He's blind," she said, and there it was, the belief that made monsters bold. "And you'll behave," she added, "or you'll sleep on the floor again." The threat landed like a slap. Sebastian did not move. He counted his breaths until the sound of the door closing told him she was gone. He stood after a long minute, knees steady, heart steady. He removed the glasses and folded them carefully on the table. The lie had done its work. He had what he needed. Not yet proof the world would accept, but proof enough for him. And that was the most dangerous kind. That night, Sebastian sat beside Noah's bed and read in a voice meant to be heard. He read about ships that crossed storms and boys who learned the stars. He read until Noah's breathing evened out. When he stood to leave, Noah's hand caught his sleeve. "Daddy," he whispered, the word fragile as glass. Sebastian bent, heart in his throat. "I see," Noah said. It wasn't a question. It was a plea. Sebastian kissed his son's forehead and did not answer. Answers would come with action. He stepped into the hallway and put the glasses back on, the mask settling into place. Downstairs, Mara laughed into her phone, the sound bright and careless. Sebastian listened, smiling faintly to himself, and planned the next move with the calm that had built an empire. The house slept, unaware that the darkness it relied on had just become a weapon turned inward. Sebastian Halle woke before dawn. Not because he needed to, but because sleep no longer trusted him. The image of Noah on the marble floor replayed with merciless clarity, each detail sharper than the last. He lay still, breathing evenly, rehearsing the lie he would wear today. Blindness was no longer just a disguise. It was leverage. And Sebastian intended to use it until the truth was undeniable. At breakfast, Mara was already in control. She moved through the kitchen with the authority of someone who believed the house belonged to her by right, not contract. Plates were placed where she decided, chairs adjusted to suit her mood. Sebastian entered slowly, cane tapping, sunglasses on. Noah sat rigidly at the table, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed on the wood grain as if it were a map out of hell. Sebastian noted the new bruise on Noah's wrist. Yellowing at the edges, older, unreported. His chest tightened, but his face remained neutral, careful. "Mr. Halle," Mara said brightly as Sebastian reached for the chair. She slid it just an inch away at the last second, forcing him to stumble. He recovered smoothly, but the intent was clear. She wanted him dependent, helpless, grateful. "Thank you," Sebastian said calmly, sitting. "I don't know what I'd do without you." The words tasted like ash. Mara smiled wider, basking in the power of it. After breakfast, Sebastian retreated to his study and locked the door. He removed the glasses and stared at the wall until the anger burned down into something workable. He opened the notebook. Times, sounds, bruises, threats. He began cross-referencing them with staff schedules, camera blind spots, days when Mara was alone with Noah for hours. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't neglect. It was systematic abuse, hidden behind obedience and fear. Sebastian made his first call of the day not to a lawyer, not yet, but to his head of security, a man who had guarded him through hostile takeovers and credible threats. "I need eyes," Sebastian said quietly, "but no changes. No alerts. I want everything to look the same." The reply was immediate and understanding. Understood. The cameras would watch without announcing themselves. The house would keep its secrets just a little longer. By afternoon, Mara grew bolder. She sent Noah to clean the playroom alone, a punishment disguised as responsibility. Sebastian followed at a distance, cane tapping, posture slack. He paused in the hallway, close enough to hear. "Faster," Mara snapped. "You're not useless, are you?" A thud followed. Something knocked over. Noah's breath hitched. "I'm trying," he whispered. "Trying isn't enough," Mara replied. Sebastian leaned against the wall, heart pounding, fingers steady. He counted seconds. He waited for proof. The proof came in the form of sound. A sharp intake of breath. A muffled cry smothered by a hand. Sebastian turned his head away as if listening for something else, while every fiber of his being screamed. The camera saw what he could not allow himself to stop yet. He stayed still. He let it happen long enough to record the truth. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. That night, Sebastian sat with Noah again, reading, his voice calm, controlled. Noah leaned into him, exhausted, hollow-eyed. "Am I bad?" Noah asked suddenly. The question was small. It landed like a bomb. Sebastian closed the book slowly. "No," he said, the word ironclad. "You are good. You are kind. None of this is your fault. Noah nodded, unconvinced. Abuse had taught him different rules. Sebastian felt a cold resolve settle in. This would end completely. The next day, Sebastian invited guests to the house. Subtle ones. An old family friend. A charity liaison. People who knew the image of the Halle household and would notice cracks. Mara stiffened but adapted quickly, turning on the charm. She hovered, performed, smiled. Sebastian watched it all from behind dark lenses, marveling at the transformation. When eyes were on her, she was flawless. When they weren't, her hand lingered too long on Noah's shoulder, fingers digging in just enough to remind him who held the leash. Sebastian began to test her. He accidentally wandered into rooms at odd times. He called Noah to him unexpectedly. Each interruption irritated Mara more. Her patience thinned. Her mask slipped in private, sharpened in public. She was cornered without knowing it. And cornered predators make mistakes. The mistake came late in the afternoon. Sebastian sat in the living room while Mara helped Noah with homework. He pretended to doze. Mara leaned close to Noah, her voice a whisper laced with threat. "If you tell him anything," she said, "he won't believe you. And then it will be worse." Noah's pencil snapped. Sebastian's breathing remained even. The camera caught everything. Her words. Her grip. The fear on Noah's face. It was enough. That evening, Sebastian removed his glasses in the privacy of his study and stared at his reflection. He no longer saw a man pretending to be blind. He saw a father who had waited too long and a strategist who would not wait another second. He made the call to his attorney. Then another. Then one more to a child psychologist who owed him a favor and discretion. Downstairs, Mara hummed as she cleaned, confident, untouchable. She had no idea that the house had turned against her, that every shadow she relied on had been illuminated. Sebastian put the glasses back on and walked down the stairs slowly, deliberately. The lie was almost over, and when it ended, it would end with consequences she could not smile her way out of. Asterisk, by the time the next week began, the Halle mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt like a pressure chamber, sealed tight, every movement measured, every breath watched. Sebastian kept the glasses on at all times now, even when alone, even when it burned. The lie had become armor, and armor was heavy. But it was working. Mara believed in his blindness with a conviction that made her careless. The cameras told a story Sebastian could barely stomach. There were moments of silence that screamed louder than any sound. Moments where Mara stood too close to Noah, her shadow swallowing him. Moments where her voice dropped into something sharp and poisonous the instant Sebastian's footsteps faded. The footage wasn't dramatic in the way movies lied about abuse. It was worse. It was ordinary, routine, efficient. Abuse folded neatly into the day like laundry. Sebastian watched everything once. Only once. Then he locked the files away and focused on what came next. He began changing the rhythm of the house. Meetings canceled. Trips postponed. He stayed home more, lingering in hallways, sitting quietly in rooms where Mara thought he wouldn't notice her. The tension got to her. He could hear it in the way she slammed drawers, in the clipped politeness she used with staff. Control was slipping, and Mara did not tolerate losing control. Noah noticed the change too. He stayed closer to Sebastian now, hovering within arm's reach, as if proximity itself were protection. When Sebastian sat, Noah sat. When he stood, Noah followed. Mara tried to reassert dominance with looks, with subtle gestures, but something had shifted. The child was no longer entirely alone. One afternoon, Sebastian accidentally asked Mara to help him find a document in the study. It was a test. She hesitated just for a fraction of a second before agreeing. The room was small, the door closing behind them with a soft click. It should be on the lower shelf, Sebastian said, turning away deliberately. He heard her move. Heard her stop. You're sure? She asked. I can't see, Sebastian replied simply. Silence stretched. He felt it then, the assessment. The calculation. Mara stepped closer than necessary, her breath near his ear. Must be terrifying, she murmured, not knowing what's happening around you. Sebastian smiled faintly. You get used to it. He heard her step back, unsettled. The power play hadn't gone the way she expected. That night, the child psychologist came quietly. Introduced as a family consultant. Sebastian stayed in the room. Silent, blind, while Noah spoke in halting fragments. The words came slowly at first, then faster, tumbling out once permission existed. She says I'm bad. She says Daddy won't believe me. She says I deserve it. Sebastian sat perfectly still, nails digging into his palm, while the truth carved itself into the room. The psychologist's voice stayed calm, steady, professional. But her eyes flicked to Sebastian more than once. Filled with restrained fury. When the session ended, Sebastian thanked her and guided Noah to bed himself. He stayed until sleep took him, until the small body finally relaxed, no longer braced for impact. Then Sebastian stood in the hallway and let the mask crack just for a moment. His breath shook. His jaw locked. Then it passed. Rage had no place here. Precision did. Mara sensed it. The next day, she pushed harder. She criticized Noah in front of Sebastian, her tone sharper than usual. He's slow today, she said. Disobedient. Sebastian turned his head toward the sound of Noah's breathing. He's a child, he said calmly. The rebuke was gentle. It landed like a slap. Mara's eyes hardened. That evening, she made her biggest mistake. Sebastian sat in the living room, apparently asleep, while Mara ushered Noah toward the stairs. You'll clean your room again, she said under her breath. You didn't do it right. Noah hesitated. Daddy said, her hand closed around his arm. Your father can't see, she snapped. And he won't hear you either. Sebastian stood. The suddenness of it stole the air from the room. His cane fell, clattering against the floor. He did not remove the glasses. He did not raise his voice. Let him go, he said. Mara froze. Slowly, she released Noah, stepping back, face rearranging itself into confusion. I was just, she began. I said, Sebastian repeated, let him go. Noah bolted to his father's side, clutching his sleeve. Sebastian placed a hand over his son's head, steady, grounding. Then he turned his face toward Mara, dark lenses reflecting her own distorted image. You've been very careless, Sebastian said quietly. Mara laughed, brittle and forced. I don't know what you think you heard. I heard everything, Sebastian interrupted. Silence fell, heavy and absolute. Her smile faltered. You're blind, she said, too quickly. You don't know what you're talking about. Sebastian tilted his head. No, he said. You don't know what I'm capable of. He didn't expose her then. Not yet. He turned, guiding Noah away, leaving Mara standing alone in the living room, the first real fear cracking through her certainty. That night, she packed a bag. Not to leave, but to prepare. She made calls in whispers. She planned out. She didn't realize it was already too late. The evidence was complete. The witnesses were ready. And the lie that had protected her cruelty was about to collapse under the weight of the truth. The house held its breath. So did Sebastian. Asterisk. Mara made her move before dawn, believing the mansion would remain blind to her intentions. She moved like a shadow, confident in her assumed invisibility. Her heels tapped softly against the marble floors as she navigated the hallways she had memorized, clutching her packed bag and gripping Noah's wrist. The boy's small fingers curled around hers, not out of comfort, but because he had learned fear was survival. Mara whispered over his shoulder, "We'll be safe with my sister. Don't speak. Don't cry. Daddy can't see." Noah swallowed hard, his heart pounding so fiercely it seemed he could hear it in his ears. But Sebastian knew. Sebastian had always known. He knew because the house changed its sound. The silence thickened, carrying tension that vibrated through the walls. Drawers opened with unusual care, phone vibrations muted too quickly, footsteps paced faster than normal. Mara believed urgency could hide reality. She believed her meticulous planning, her hours of control, had made her untouchable. She had been wrong. Sebastian had observed, calculated, and prepared. He had been waiting for this precise moment, and now it had arrived. Sebastian rose quietly from the shadows of his study, the cane in his hand tapping softly to create the illusion of a blind man stumbling. His heart, however, raced with controlled fury. Every step Mara took, every breath she drew, was catalogued in his mind. He followed her silently, a predator cloaked in patience. The mansion, which had been a theater for Mara's cruelty, had transformed into Sebastian's stage of reckoning. Every echo worked for him, every door creak revealed her position. When Mara reached the grand foyer with Noah in tow, Sebastian appeared suddenly, his dark sunglasses glinting in the soft light of the morning sun streaming through the towering windows. "Put the bag down," he said quietly. The words seemed to ripple through the marble floors, subtle yet undeniable. Mara froze, her calculated calm faltering for the first time. "Sebastian," she said, masking surprise with false composure. "You shouldn't be up alone." "Release him," Sebastian said. There was no pleading in his voice, no negotiation, only quiet authority. Mara's lips pressed into a thin line. "I'm taking Noah to my sister," she replied, voice sharp, teeth gritted. "He needs stability. This situation, you can't protect him. He needs me." Her grip on Noah tightened. Sebastian removed the glasses slowly. The house seemed to exhale as the illusion shattered. Mara's smile faltered. Her carefully constructed armor cracked as she realized the truth. He had never been blind. He had been watching all along, absorbing every movement, every sound, every small act of cruelty that had terrorized his son. His eyes sharp, unyielding, burning met hers. The predator had become the hunted. "You were never in control," Sebastian said softly. "You were only unobserved." Mara's confidence evaporated. "You lied." She spat, but the words carried no weight. The mansion seemed to align with Sebastian, the floors reflecting authority, the walls echoing inevitability. "I had to," she whispered, voice cracking. "I had to maintain order." Sebastian's expression did not waver. "Order built on fear isn't control. It's destruction," he said. He gestured toward the wall. The monitors flickered to life. Security cameras, strategically placed, displayed everything. Mara's whispered threats, her tense hands pressing down on Noah, her cruel laughter hidden in rooms she thought he could not see. Every moment of abuse recorded in precise, undeniable clarity. Mara lunged for the screens. Security intercepted her instantly, restraining her hands and keeping her from destroying the evidence. Panic had replaced her control. For the first time, the woman who had ruled with fear realized that fear could no longer protect her. The officers who had once silently followed Sebastian's commands now stepped forward to enforce the consequences of her actions. Her scream echoed through the foyer, desperate and raw, but meaningless. Noah clung to Sebastian, trembling but safe. He finally saw his father's gaze, unshielded, powerful. In that gaze was protection, judgment, and love. Sebastian bent to meet his son's height. "It's over," he said. Noah nodded, a tear sliding down his cheek, but it was no longer fear, it was relief. For the first time, the child understood that he was safe, that the monster in his life had been unmasked. Mara's trial was swift, but its impact reverberated far beyond the courthouse. Every statement she had made to staff, every manipulation she had attempted, had been documented. Testimonies from household employees, the child psychologist, and even Noah himself contributed to a body of evidence so overwhelming that her wealth and charm could not sway judgment. Conviction followed, and Mara faced both legal and social ruin. Even as the world outside debated her fate, Sebastian focused inward. He spent hours with Noah, rebuilding trust, teaching him that safety could exist without fear. He guided his son through the trauma, explaining gently that no child ever deserved to be treated as he had been. Slowly, the boy learned to speak again, to laugh again, to move freely without flinching at shadows. The mansion, once a chamber of terror, became a sanctuary of healing. Sebastian also addressed the staff. He restructured household management, ensuring that no single person could wield unchecked power over those vulnerable. Policies were put in place, cameras remained, but most importantly, he cultivated an environment where voices could not be silenced by intimidation. The mansion's halls echoed not with fear anymore, but with accountability, order, and respect. One evening, Sebastian and Noah stood on the balcony overlooking the gardens, the sunset casting long golden shadows across the marble. Noah's hand gripped his father's. "Daddy," he asked softly, "were you really blind?" Sebastian smiled, a slow, weighty smile that carried years of strategy, pain, and triumph. "Only to the wrong things," he said. And for the first time in months, Noah laughed a full, unrestrained laugh. In the weeks that followed, Sebastian began public initiatives focused on child protection, using his platform to ensure no other child endured the silent terror that had stalked his own home. Every press conference, every interview, was a careful balance of visibility and privacy, teaching the world that courage, vigilance, and truth could overcome even the most insidious cruelty. Mara's attempts to recover, to reclaim influence or wealth, were met with resistance. Her social standing was fractured. Her alliances dissolved. The mansion she once controlled, the life she had manipulated, became an emblem of her failure. Sebastian had turned her own tools against her: observation, patience, leverage, demonstrating that power built on fear is never stable and always leaves a trace. Through it all, Sebastian and Noah's bond deepened. They navigated therapy sessions, late-night talks, and playful afternoons in the garden. The trauma of the past lingered, but it no longer ruled their lives. Sebastian taught his son the importance of honesty, resilience, and observation. He taught him that power is not about control or fear, it is about responsibility and protection. One rainy afternoon, months later, Sebastian and Noah sat together in the study, reviewing a storybook. Noah's fingers traced the illustrations without hesitation. "Daddy," he said, "I'm not scared anymore." Sebastian placed a hand over his son's. "And you never will be," he said. Outside, the storm rattled the windows, but inside, the house remained calm, warm, and filled with light. The shadows that Mara had thrived in were gone. The billionaire had regained his home, his son's trust, and his family's safety. But more importantly, he had taught a child the most valuable lesson of all, that courage, patience, and truth can dismantle even the most calculated cruelty. And that love-steady, vigilant, unyielding love is stronger than fear, stronger than manipulation, and ultimately, stronger than anyone who dares to abuse it. Sebastian looked down at Noah, smiling as he felt the weight of years of vigilance finally lift. The boy no longer flinched at shadows. The mansion no longer echoed with terror. Justice had been served, not with vengeance, but with exposure, truth, and unwavering resolve. And in that triumph, father and son both understood. True power is not wealth or fear. True power is protection. True power is love. The house stood quiet, serene, and alive with light, a monument to victory and resilience. And as Sebastian turned toward the window, watching the first glimmers of sunrise spill across the marble floors, he knew that the nightmare was over. For the first time, in every room, every corner, and every echo, safety and justice reigned.